so much, Laddie, and quite a lot to look out for in 2025. Now, let's switch our conversation to security. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because of what's happened in the nation's capital, Niger, Zamfara, Borno. A lot of these things happening at the same time this year. Let's take a look at this one here from the nation's capital. And it was really shocking to hear that this happened again. We thought these days were far behind us. We thought this was over. It would never come back into the nation's capital. But a very disappointing story that we saw from the Buhari Area Council and Islamia. That's a school where they teach Islamic studies. And that particular area, Beijing, they call that area. And watching the visuals from this place actually brought fear in the minds of many residents of the nation's capital. And, you know, it's one of those situations where we need to understand what the dynamics are. What's going on? Where have we slipped? What's the mistake that has been made? Because from the statement that we're seeing from the police on this situation that happened in the nation's capital, the distress call was made by the Sarki of Kuchibui, and the police operatives, including the command's explosive ordnance disposal team and the area commander of Kubwa, actually mobilized to the scene. The place was immediately cordoned off to protect residents, and victims were evacuated and rushed to the hospital for medical attention, according to the police. And the preliminary investigations is the part where really gets us worried. The preliminary investigations by the police revealed that 3 men from Katsina had visited the owner of the Islamic school. The owner of the school is Malam Adamu Ashimu. The 3 visitors are suspected of having brought the explosive device with them, according to the police. And tragically, 2 of the men died in the explosion while tampering with the IED on the school veranda. So they had got to see the owner of the school, and then they were on the veranda. And while they were tampering with that explosive device, it exploded. And then a 3rd man and a female trader got severe injuries and are receiving treatment under police guard. And the police has basically confirmed that this was an IED explosion. Remnants of the IED have been picked up by the police. So where are we dropping the ball? Where is the mistake being made? How did this happen? Well, joining us to have this conversation, we have Captain Bish Johnson, retired U.S. Army personnel. He is joining us. I think we'll only take him via phone from Egbama in Imo State. Thank you so much for being with us, Captain.
Thank you for having me.
And then we also have joining us via Zoom from Kano State, security expert Kabiru Adamu. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kela. Good morning.
I'm going to start off with you, Mr. Adamu. What happened here? Where did we drop the ball? What mistake was made in your view?
We've had these conversations with you previously, Kela, where I harped on the importance of intelligence in any security arrangement. In simple terms, the role and responsibility of any security arrangement is to enhance public security. And the only way that can be done is if we gather the right intelligence to do that. In this instance, from the narrative you've given, the intelligence was there. People arrived with materials that obviously had IED components in them. Nobody detected them. They went ahead to attempt to, we don't know what their motive is. So at this stage, only an investigation would reveal their motive. Were they, unwitting couriers? Because, terrorist groups actually do that. They have couriers. Sometimes their members could be those couriers. Other times it could be innocent persons that would be given the material. But the simple thing is we've not raised the awareness of the public enough to support the security department in harnessing intelligence in the manner that would prevent the deployment of IED materials. Today, if you go to the internet, you are able to gather knowledge to put together an IED. And so our ability to take note of incidents and developments, movement of individuals, movement of materials, to the extent that we can preempt and prevent this type of incident, I think is what matters. There are, if you look at the three major documents or strategies that we have for terrorism, that is the National Counterterrorism Strategy, which is in short called NACTES, then the Policy Framework on Countering Violent Extremism, and then lastly, the Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Act. They have provisions for every member of society to support the counterterrorism campaign. But sadly, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, we have not been carried along. If you bring a journalist today and ask the journalist, what is your role in these three documents? He probably or she doesn't know because we've not been carried along. Likewise, if you go to these Islamias, that is the topic of our conversation today, how many of them know their role in supporting the counterterrorism strategy? So this is what dropped the ball. We have the strategies, they are in place. The NACTES was introduced in 2016. PCVE was introduced in 2017. Then the Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Act was amended in 2022. So there is nothing new. If we had implemented them in the manner that we're supposed to implement them, we wouldn't have this challenge. Sadly, we've not learned from the mistakes in the past. We're not carrying people along. And so gaps have been created that are being exploited by the bad guys.
I mean, I want to come to Captain Bish. So moving from Katsina to Abuja, okay, well, we can assume that they didn't go through the roads because there are checkpoints everywhere on the highways or up to that Buari. There are checkpoints everywhere. So we can only assume that they came in through those mountains or some kind of route into the FCT. And that's something that we've talked about before, I think, with you, Captain Bish, where we've talked about, these terrains, these mountainous terrains, and how are they manned? We did hear that technology was going to be, deployed in these areas, make sure that we check the movement of these elements from one place to the other. Is this a failure of that promise?
Yeah. Good morning, and thank you again for having me. The individuals may have come from the road. It's possible that those explosive devices were not. They didn't bring them from Katsina State. It's possible that the materials were purchased there in the FCT area, and those explosive devices assembled there in the FCT areas. It's also possible that they may have also brought them from Katsina and they were able to pass through all the various checkpoints and they were not detected. So, but all this speaks to is that Nigeria is still struggling with issues of foundational security measures. We are still not able to police our country to capacity. I'm not telling you that there's anywhere in the world where you have absolute security. No, there's nowhere there is absolute security. But there should be enough security for people to have confidence that government is able to protect their lives and their property. It shouldn't be what we are experiencing in Nigeria. So we still have to do some of the take some of those rudimentary measures in terms of internal policing of our country. And one of those is making sure that our borders, and I continue to hammer on that, our borders must be secured. We have to secure our borders from external intrusion. And that's why you saw what played out in the U.S. during their election. You can't leave your borders porous and expect to have a secure country, because not everybody that is pouring into your country is coming with good intention. So we have to isolate ourselves from these criminals that are coming outside Nigeria, so that we will be able to deal with the criminal elements that are within Nigeria itself. So what we see is that we're running in a circle. We're leaving our borders open, and we're trying to solve internal security problems that we're having in Nigeria. Meanwhile, people are crossing our borders, criminals are pouring into our country, and they're terrorizing our citizens. So the fundamentals of policing is still lacking in Nigeria. And until we take care of those rudiments of policing, which I have said includes making sure that our borders are secured, beefing up the capacity of our law enforcement agencies, not just only the police, and that also include the immigrations, the customs, the prisons. All of these agencies that are saddled with responsibility of enforcing the law and protecting lives and property, improve their capacity through technology, as you have said. There seems to be a whole bunch of ungoverned spaces in Nigeria. And the reason why those spaces remain ungoverned is because somehow we have killed local government administrations in Nigeria. We've held local government administrations, which are the level of government that is closest to the people. And in each of all these instances where we have had security breaches, they are occurring at the local levels. These rural areas that are very minimal or even zero government, which the local government administration is supposed to have covered. But because the local government, we don't have local government, a functional local government structure in Nigeria, those areas seem not to have any government presence, and nothing in terms of policing is taking place in those areas.
I want to be able to get, I don't want to lose that train of thought. So let me bring in Kabiru Adamu. Well, you heard what Captain Bish talked about there, local governments and its failure. And these things are happening at those levels. The one in Abuja happened in Buhari, which is an area council, has an area council chairman. And then the one that happened in Borno, in Damboa. Damboa is a local government area as well. The roles that these local governments play in ensuring that we don't have an influx of people who do not mean well for our country. We've heard the military and even state governments, refer to, these people are not from here. They come from outside into this place. Whether they come from outside or they are from there. I think maybe you should speak to that dynamic when it comes to local government, organization and security at those levels, especially in the light of this thing that's happened in Buhari Area Council that, as I said earlier, has a chairman, and then the Damboa local government area. Particularly in that Borno state, we were just excited recently that the state governor had subsidized the cost of fuel for farmers to 600 naira. And then this happens, the killing of 6 soldiers in this gun battle between the police and terrorists. Local governments in these areas, is there a fault line that we haven't been able to navigate?
Yes, there is. And I think the Bola Tinubu Ahmed administration deserves a lot of commendation for putting ahead this, I would say, noble objective of attempting to grant autonomy to the local government, level of governance, as it were, in spite of the resistance that came from certain quarters. Now, we're hoping that in this 2025, I've seen a few releases from the administration suggesting that they will ensure that the granting of autonomy to the local government would be achieved in this year. And so we're also hoping that it wouldn't just be financial autonomy, it wouldn't just be political autonomy, but they would also be incorporated into the several requirements of governance, including security. So in other words, it's not just for the local governments to have that autonomy, but how are we going to incorporate them into different aspects of governance, including security? Now, part of the challenge at the subnational level, if you look at the state government, is that there is no capacity building, no harmonized approach for governors to be involved in the security, provisioning, as it were. The Constitution still sees security as an exclusive item for the federal government, in spite of the reality that we have today, where several governors do have enormous capacity. I'm sure you monitored when the president was in Enugu. He launched a command and control center by the Enugu state government. Kela, that command and control center in Enugu is the most advanced in the world at the moment. It has technology for biometrics, where faces can be recognized just by the algorithm that you put on the computer. I doubt if there's any other platform, either at the federal or any state government level, that has that kind of capacity. So if a state government can invest like that, what are we waiting for? Why are we not incorporating the states into our security arrangement. So this is the area that I'm hoping, as we achieve that local government autonomy, we now also transcend the capacity of those local government chairmen to support the security arrangement. In my opening remarks, I talked about three policy documents that we have for addressing terrorism in the country. At what point are we going to meet the governors and the local government chairmen and introduce these strategies to them and tell them this is their role in supporting the implementation of that document? The reality, Kela, is the drivers and triggers of insecurity happen at the very local level in our villages. The recruitment, the radicalization, the weaponization happens at that level. So if we do not involve the governance elements at that level into our strategy, our national security strategy, then honestly, our actions will be futile. And this is the mindset I'm hoping that the administration will start looking at security from. They've talked about local government autonomy, but we need to move further by making sure we incorporate what the state...
Those local governments in security. I want to pass to Ayo, because Ayo has a few questions for you.
Well, thank you, Kayla. I'd actually like to speak with Mr. Adamu a little more. Well, Mr. Adamu, tell me how you feel, not just as a professional, but as a Nigerian who knows all that is happening, who understands the political economy, the social economy of the particular location of, where this whole thing happened. How do you feel, and what do you think should be the immediate emotive response? Because this is about people's lives, not just data or statistics.
I feel in the sense that the solutions are there, and your platform, Channels TV, has given me enormous, opportunities to hear some of these solutions. I remember your colleague Keller did feature me in one of our programs where we discussed security in the FCT. And beyond that, I did tell Keller at that time that I had written formally to the Minister of the FCT to advocate on what I called a security approach. This is a public platform, so I wouldn't want to speak too much around that. So I feel a little bit sad that the solutions are there. It is not about deploying the military. It's not about deploying the police. It's about a holistic approach. When we hear the whole of governance and whole of society approach, that's how to go. So that every member of the FCT, every Nigerian actually, we're discussing FCT now, but it affects, I just heard the governor of one of the southwest states today complaining that bandits are leaving from northwest to go to his states. So are we going to wait until we start seeing attacks in those states? Our approach should be an approach that is preventative, not an approach that is reactive. So honestly, I feel sad. The fact that I spend a lot of time, I run a company.
What's interesting, my sincere apologies for butting in, Mr. Adam. What's also interesting or even more heartbreaking is the situation in Borno State, where we understand that the military base was actually attacked. What touches me the most about that one, and a number of security experts such as yourself have spoken to it, one, intelligence or lack or failure of it, and then secondly, and Captain Bishop Johnson has spoken about that this morning, the extent of porosity at the borders, which underscores the importance, a very important need to engage the local communities a lot more. There is no doubt that the governor of Borno State is doing way too much, if there is any such thing. But for this to happen, and it almost catches us unawares, and people's lives are lost, security personnel's lives are lost, that definitely is a lot more heartbreaking than one can imagine.
I agree. And honestly, every listener, especially those that have the capacity, the authority to implement, should pick those three documents that I mentioned: the NACTES, National Counterterrorism Strategy, the PCVE, Policy Framework on Countering Violent Extremism, and then the Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Act as amended 2022. Ayo, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you pick those documents, you realize that we already have the mechanisms. what is lacking is implementation. And so to that extent, perhaps the National Assembly needs to come in and conduct an evaluation and answer the question, why are we failing in our implementation strategy? Is it a weakness of our M&E frameworks, our monitoring and evaluation framework, or is it a weakness of perhaps lack of accountability within the security sector? If these are the reasons, then perhaps in 2025, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration should look closely at these areas, the area of M&E, strengthening M&E within our security sectors, and then enhancing accountability within that sector. So that,
but Mr. Adamu, my apologies again. I am an acute optimist in the fact that we have the, if not the best, one of the best trained security personnel in the Army, in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the police, you name it. I believe, I'm persuaded, if any and everywhere. So I'm listening to the Chief of Defense Staff in recent time. One of the things that he said repeatedly is that, look, there is a role for the military to play, and the military will play its role. But then there is also a role for politics or politicians, and they will also play their roles. In fact, there has been some comments made that some of the insecurity that we see, they are a function of some political activities or a lack of it. If first of all, what do you make of that? That some people are actually behind the fact that Nigerians are dying over the years, and it will seem like nothing is being done about it.
So there are two components to that. There are what we can call the triggers of insecurity, and then there are the drivers of insecurity. Now, most of those drivers and triggers are actually socio-political issues, unemployment, inability to mitigate climate change, the poverty level in the country, issues around radicalization. Earlier on, I spoke about movement of materials that are used for making IEDs. Under the Buhari administration, the Office of the National Security Advisor had an ad hoc committee that was monitoring the movement of incendiary materials. I do not know if that committee is still active. It's very important that we look at those areas. So yes, the role and that politicians can play in addressing those triggers and those drivers is so important. If we wait until we have the challenge and then we now deploy, because let's remember our security departments, 29 of them, I always want to remind us of this. We have 29 different ministries, departments, and agencies that are responsible for security in the country. They are instruments of policy implementation. In other words, it is what the politicians ask them to do that they would do. But where the politicians, for instance, allow poverty to be high, allow all those socioeconomic challenges, fail to mitigate the consequences of climate change, and there is farmer herder violence, and they now deploy security agencies to go and prevent that, then there is no amount of security personnel that we would deploy. So yes, I agree with the Chief of Defense Staff that the role of politicians in addressing the triggers and drivers of insecurity is even more important than the instrument for addressing security challenges, which is the ministries, departments, and agencies that we have for security. When they say we don't have enough security personnel, it may be true. But what is more important is to acknowledge that we need to take preventive measures to allow the security challenges. You hear the kinetic and non-kinetic, language in security. It's simply around that. That non-kinetic component is primarily the role of the political class, especially political office holders. Talking about bombing and IEDs, the role of Ministry of Transport cannot be overemphasized. We need to make sure that that ministry is incorporated into our national security strategy. If persons can, load some incendiary materials from point A and move it to point B, where are they going to load it? It's likely to be in a vehicle or a train or sometimes even at the airport. But the security posture of the airport is much more better than in the other two means of transportation. So again, those three documents that I mentioned, I don't want to go into the details of the contents of those three documents, but the answer is in those documents. We just need to review those documents, ask critical questions. Why haven't we implemented the provisions in those
the provisions of those documents. Mr. Kabiru and Captain Bishop, I'm asking the same question to both of you, and I'm hoping that you can wrap it up in 1 minute each. When it comes to the nation's capital, it's the seat of power. Too many important national assets are here, and the security of this place is very important. What should the FCT minister and everybody from the security offices and all the apparatus is all here in the nation's capital for this to have happened while the force headquarters is here, the army is here, the navy is here, the air force is here. For this to have happened in Beijing, in Buhari Area Council, is one that makes us a little bit worried. So what should all the security agencies and the FCT authorities be doing right now to ensure that this doesn't become a trend in the nation's capital?
Am I going first?
Yes, Mr. Bish, go first.
Okay, I don't hear Amu and Ayo, so I don't know what question was asked and what response was given. I can only hear you.
Yes.
Now, but based on what the question that you are asking, the security of every part of Nigeria is as important as the security of the FCT. That's why we are a nation. We should be able to provide equal security and enough security for every Nigerian citizen, regardless of the side. Ensure that every level of our government is functioning. We can't wait for Abuja from Abuja and secure every aspect of this country.
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you there so we can get Mr. Kabiru to give his thoughts on that as well in just 1 minute.
All right. I did say that I've sent a letter to the minister,
yes.
And in that letter, I identified what we call the 3 R's of security and the 3 D's of security: the ability to detect, to deny, and to delay assailants when they come, the ability to respond, to recover, and to take measures to ensure that we have an arrangement for public security that is sacrosanct. I'm available, if the minister is listening to this, at any point in time to talk more about the solutions that I've listed in that proposal.
Thank you both so much for your perspectives this morning. Captain Bish Johnson, retired U.S. Army personnel, joining us from Egbe, Imo State via the telephone, and Kabiru Adamu, security expert, joining us via Zoom from Kano. Thank you both so much for being with us on the program, and good luck with all you have ahead of you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that's our show this morning. Please be safe. Make sure you are very conscious of your surroundings as we go into this new year with all the possibilities. Let's not forget how important it is to keep our environments and our families safe. I'm Kayla Megwa. See you next time.
And I'm Aya Makine. Do have a productive day.